We're very excited. We have some very special guests joining us here from all over the country. I am very excited to welcome back a big fan of our show and friend of our show, award-winning author Tom Lisanti is here. And for the very first time, and I'm sure not the last, because she's going to be designated by all of our viewers, a Jim Masters Lovety within seconds, the extraordinary acclaimed actress and singer Caryn Richman is joining us here, coming to us. Normally she's in Nashville. She grew up in the New York area out on Long Island, as did I, as did Tom. So you've got a trifecta of New York energy here. She's doing some work right now in beautiful Nashville. Caryn and Tom, welcome to the Jim Masters Show, my friends.
Thank you for having me back.
Thank you for having us.
It's a pleasure. And it's really exciting because we're talking about something very, very special. We've had several guests on our series who have performed in, have produced in, who've acted in, who have also celebrated daytime dramas, daytime television, or the soaps. And there's a particular one that people may remember from the 1980s, which was a spin-off of a beloved series that went some 35 years, Another World, with, of course, Rachel and Matt Corey and Ada and all of the folks. That was on in our house, too. Victoria Wyndham and Douglas Watson and, oh boy, Constance Ford and Stephen Schnetzer, the whole group. And, of course, Caryn here as well. And who played Iris on that show? The wonderful Beverlee McKinsey. She was so fabulous as Iris on that show. And what's really special, whether you are a super fan of daytime dramas or not, she went on to, of course, other shows. But one of the shows that she went on to when she did leave Another World, and there you have, you got Sandy, and you've got Blaine, and you've got Rachel, and you've got Mac. You're surprised I know the names, right? No,
yeah, very, very good.
And we had that on, and we still watch the reruns or the the online stuff. There's clips of some of the old episodes, and there is Beverlee, who played Iris. She went on to another series that was spun off from Another World, which of course was on for such a long time. And that series, you may remember, was called Texas, and it aired on NBC. Now, it didn't last very long. However, something amazing, it has a fabulous cult following. And Caryn was on that show as well. She sure was. Matter of fact, I know many of you watching are excited that Caryn is here, so we're honored. She's a very busy person, as is Tom. They have a lot going on. But in addition to being on some of your favorite soaps, Caryn has also graced our presence as the new Gidget as well. Yes, and she has a very close connection with the Brady family as well. She was in A Very Brady Christmas, and she was also on the series The Bradys, and was with Greg, of course. And it's amazing the incredible background that you have, Caryn. So wonderful to have you guys here. And as we celebrate Texas, this short-lived but still thought about soap opera, how did you guys get to the point of wanting to remember it and relish in it and sort of celebrate it once again? I'll start with you, Tom, because you wrote this fabulous book that Caryn also is involved in as well. She wrote the foreword, called Texas, An Oral History of Daytime TV's Answer to Dallas. And we had Linda Gray on the show too, speaking of Dallas. Oh.
Connections everywhere.
Yeah. How'd you come up? What was it? I know if you love soap operas, folks, you got to read everything that Tom does. We may remember not that long ago, we had the group from Ryan's Hope with us, and he wrote the definitive book on Ryan's Hope. What was it about Texas that fascinated you? And how did you and wonderful Caryn link up on this project?
Well, I did my Ryan's Hope book, and that particular publisher asked if I would, if I was interested in doing another one on another soap opera. And I said yes, but I said the only other soap opera I really watched that I was religiously devoted to, like with Ryan's Hope, was Texas. And that's because I discovered Ryan's Hope by myself when I was a freshman in college. And my aunt, Maria Casamento, got me a job while I was going to Nassau Community College on Long Island, filing mortgages at Guardian Bank, which was near the school. And the vault for the mortgages was next to the break room. And it was an ABC crowd. The ladies would come down, knew it was Family Feud and Ryan's Hope at 12 and 12:30, all my children at 1, One Life to Live at 2, and that crappy General Hospital at 3. Except for General Hospital. I really
and there's a reason why he says that, folks, and that had some effect on Texas.
I didn't like Luke and Laura. So a couple of months in, this new gal started working with us, and she was an MDC fan. So if she got to the TV at 2 o'clock before the One Life to Live fans, she had Another World on. And they would come down and choke on their food. And I liked Another World. And she would leave the channel on. And then Texas started. And I got hooked on Texas. And I was one of very few. Like, everybody was into Luke and Laura. I didn't understand it. So I watched Texas. So after I did my Ryan's Hope book, I said, well, I could do a book on Texas. Also because, thanks to a guy named Chuck, a lot of them are on YouTube, and I could refresh my memory and watch them again, and which is what I did. And then I started reaching out to cast members like Caryn, who graciously allowed me to interview her, Phil Clark, Ken Schreiner, Joe McCafferty, Beverlee McKinsey's son, Scott McKenzie, filled me in about, his mom. But the funny thing is, the publisher for the Ryan's Hope book rejected it. And so I went to a different publisher.
Yeah, right. Our friends at Bear Manor.
Right, at Bear Manor Media.
Yeah, they're terrific, aren't they? Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. And actually, just today, we finalized the whole thing. It's going to print. So it should be out probably in March.
Wow.
Much sooner than I expected.
That's amazing. And Caryn, you were a part of Texas. Tell us about that time and what those moments were like.
Well, first of all, I must tell you that when Tom first contacted me about this book, first of all, I was super excited because Texas holds such a special place in my heart. It was, the very beginning of a long journey. And I, really learned my way in front of the camera, much to, potentially some faltering in there at times. I learned from Tom's book. It was the first time I heard that some of the upstairs executives were not particularly happy with the talent level of their young talent. And when I read that, I was like, oh, that's too bad. But anyway, it just is, it was a very special chapter in my life. And when I read Tom's book, I was completely blown away when he had, he was wonderful enough to send it to me. I felt, almost in some ways that I was reading my own diary about these cast members that I had grown so close with, that we, we're in the trenches together with a brand new soap. We knew we were up against General Hospital, and we were fighting that every step of the way. But we all certainly grew up together, at least the younger contention on that show. And I think Tom's book is amazing. And when I read it, I was blown away by how much he knows, and much more so than I know. To be honest, I mean, it's a plethora of Texas nostalgia all between those pages, and it's beautiful. So, but
he is amazing, because when he dives in, he really dives in, and he exactly, he knows what was served for craft services. I mean, everything. He's got it all down.
Actually, there is a little story. Somebody, Haito Pa, when they went on location, they talked. One of they said to the art director, talked about being served cold shrimp in the middle of the desert.
See, now I have no recollection what we ate. I have no recollection of any of the food sources at that point, but,
Right.
but I'm so glad that you do. I don't know.
It's amazing. And there was also the relationship with Another World as well, Caryn?
Yes. So Another World was filming at NBC Studios out in Brooklyn, and Texas, as Tom so beautifully tells the story, was a spinoff. I knew nothing, by the way, of the whole history behind Texas and how we came to be. I'm not sure why I didn't dive deeper into that in my lifetime, but all I knew is that I was lucky enough to be hired. A lot of us went from, Another World, and then we spun off into Texas. But we continued to work at the same studio out in Brooklyn. And throughout Tom's book, a lot of the actors talk about that dynamic. But we shared that studio space with Another World. And that picture makes me laugh.
Do you remember that? Remember that scene?
That's not actually from Texas.
That's a great shot of you. Yeah.
That is a short film, and I'm being very seductive in that shot. But
it's a great shot.
But Chuck, is his last name Snitcher?
Oh, yeah, yes.
He, as Tom mentioned, has been posting episodes of Texas. And when I watch them, or when I see photos that are posted on the Texas fan page, I'm blown away. It literally is like looking at my own diary, and it makes me smile. I loved this show. I all the politics aside and all of our struggling aside, we were a very bonded group. And especially, again, there was a divide. I know I'm sort of jumping all over the place, but there was the older, more established and, really well-equipped and talented actors that Tom talks about and that were on our show, Beverlee McKinsey, Carla Borelli, but I never had scenes with them. I don't think I had, other than party scenes. So the younger John McCafferty, Ellen Maxted, that the whole younger contention really bonded together, and we had a great deal of fun.
So that was a pivotal, like you said, time in your career where you really honed your skills. And they've always said that if you can survive the rigors of a soap opera with all of the dialogue and all the scenes being shot, and you then can really, it's great training ground for taking on other roles in other venues and platforms down the line. It really is a test of your tenacity and patience and really everything when you're on a soap opera or daytime drama, right?
Yes. I mean, Tom also talks about that so much in the book, but, it's pages and pages of dialogue. In my case, Elena Dekker, my character, was young and emotional and finding her way. Somebody mentioned, I saw the other day, that Elena was terribly annoying, and it made me laugh, but on the Facebook page, but she was always going through so much emotion. So it was, tears and angst and just it is the greatest training ground. It makes me sad almost that for today's younger actors, they don't have as much soap opera opportunity, because having a job on a soap opera, as you've said, is absolutely the greatest training. You're under pressure. You don't get a lot of takes. If you're anywhere near close to a good take, you're done. Boom, let's move on, because you're shooting so many pages. So that certainly set me up. Again, I cannot tell you that I was the greatest actor when I got on that show, but certainly when I look at the first, couple of months versus when I left, I felt very grateful that I had gotten to do 268 shows at the very, very beginning of my career. So again, it will always be, that was my starting ground. And it was trial by fire, as they say. But
what came first for you? Because you're an actress and a wonderful singer. What came first, and what was the first opportunity, you think, when you look back at your career, that really opened up the door for you that even led to something like Texas?
Well, First of all, let me say that I'm incredibly grateful to be called a singer. I'm not sure I consider myself that. Certainly was singing on Texas. I started in the Broadway and national touring companies of Greece, and that was my very first professional credit. Um, and the fact that I have continued to sing throughout my career, but I again am humbled by the fact that people have asked me to sing professionally, because I don't have the kind of vocal instrument that a terribly gifted singer would have. But what I think I always wanted to do is be able to act through my singing. So um, Elena certainly sang, and I was happy with that genre, the country western. I had never done that before. Um, and Grease was a show also that didn't necessarily, it wasn't your traditional ingenue, you didn't have to have a tremendous amount of range. And so in that respect, I've had a lot of opportunities to sing. I sang on the new Gidget as well. And it just makes me laugh. I'm not suggesting that I can't sing by any means, but I just, I loved that I had the opportunity to sing in so many instances in my career. And yeah, I mean, how fun. It was wonderful.
Absolutely.
I
What
have
was it?
a good friend named Sean Chang, and he sings me the songs Elena sings from Texas over the phone.
Oh my gosh.
And he was so disappointed that the only question he said, you have to ask her, where can I buy the song she sang on Texas? And
I wish.
it was never recorded.
Oh my gosh, Jim, the titles. It's all over town that it's all over now. That was one of Elena Dekker's, my character's hit songs. The actor that played my brother, Randy Hamilton, who was the most handsome, still is the most handsome human, was a terrific singer, and he sang a great deal on the show as well. And Tom talks a great deal about him in the book as well. And I got to sing with him a lot. Again, we got to try a lot of different things on this show. And when I think about it, really, truly, all I can do is smile about Texas. So, yeah.
I think that a lot of people are going to be very, very happy when, they have an opportunity to enjoy the book. And there is, it didn't last long, right? It was something like you mentioned, General Hospital was very competitive, and other soaps that were on there, cult following fans, shows that were on for a long time. And I know that there were a lot of different things that they tried. There was also Passions was another one. Wasn't there? Sunset Beach was another one.
Yeah, later.
Yeah, those came on later. And boy, even before all of that, still going strong, of course, Days of Our Lives, Somerset, The Doctors. We just had Bonnie Bartlett was just on, and another fabulous actress, St. Elsewhere, Little House on the Prairie, and she was in. She passed through the soap world too, and The Doctors and others, and had some wonderful, fond memories of it. It wasn't a series that lasted very long, Tom, right? But yet, people are fascinated by it. They're bringing it up. They're bringing it back. They're talking about it. They're reveling in it. Case in point, Derek is watching in Canada on the Atlantic coast. Welcome, Derek. He says, hello from the Atlantic coast of Canada. Was a huge fan of Texas as a teen. Texas was well watched in Canada.
Yes.
So you're hearing that, right, Tom?
Yes. The reason I did the book, because I got in contact with Joyce Corrington, and her husband Bill are the ones who created the show, along with Paul Rausch, who was the executive producer. So with Joyce's blessing, I did the book, and she filled me in on the whole backstory of Texas. They were stolen away from writing Search for Tomorrow. They were told they could create their own soap opera. It was going to be called Reunion. It was set in New Orleans, the post-Civil War. And at the last second, Fred Silverman said, no, I'm changing my mind. Let's do a spinoff of Another World, and let's base it on Dallas, because Dallas had just moved to started it on CBS on Friday nights, and it was a big hit. So they chose to spin off Beverlee McKinsey as Iris Bancroft. She and Jim Pointer played her son Dennis, along with Carla Borelli as Irina Bellman Cook and Lee Patterson as Dr. Kevin Cook, all swung over to Texas. Two big mistakes Joyce said that was made. One was Iris was the villain of Another World, and they softened Iris to become the heroine of Texas, and that alienated a lot of the Another World fans because they liked their Iris conniving and manipulative, being manipulating and stuff, and that's not what the Corringtons were writing. And the second big mistake was they started the show on Another World, so for 6 weeks Texas started on Another World when it was still 90 minutes. The last half hour of that 90-minute show was Texas. So when Texas started as a standalone on August 4th, people tuned in thinking they were watching a brand new show, not realizing they're already in the middle of these storylines, and because the show already started. So viewers were kind of lost because they came in, like I said, by the 7th week, where these stories were going on for 6 weeks prior. So that also hurt. And the biggest factor that killed Texas was this was just when Luke and Laura was starting to become super popular, and everybody was watching General Hospital, including a story I told where in the book I was told the daughter of Paul Rausch, who was the executive producer, came running into the studio one day to her father's office and said, "Turn on the TV, Luke and Laura are on the run. We have to watch General Hospital." And
no.
here they are, filming Texas, the competition.
Mm-hmm.
And also CBS had Guiding Light, and Doug Marlin was writing Guiding Light at that time, and that was doing really well in the ratings. So between Guiding Light doing gangbusters, General Hospital becoming a phenomenon, Texas with its Other World lead-in didn't really stand a chance, and so they struggled. They even stole Ken Schreiner from General Hospital because he was part of that Luke, Laura, and Scotty triangle. And unfortunately, Joyce Corrington remembered everything about the show. She didn't remember a thing about Ken Schreiner and his character of Jeb Hampton, which goes to show that, it was forced on them to create this character, and his storylines were not very good, and he didn't make much of an impact, unfortunately. And they didn't write him well, because I was told a lot of writers, when the network forces them to write something, they do it sort of half-heartedly because it's not from their mind, it's not their characters, and so that didn't work. So it had a lot of things going against it, but it had a lot of great things. I mean, the first 6 months when the Corringtons wrote it, you had Iris and meddling it with Dennis's life. You had Elena falling for John McCafferty's Billy Joe Wright, who was an ex-con, beat his wife, slapped Elena around, tried to rape Dawn Marshall. The funny thing about Elena is she had the worst.
That's all on one episode.
No, really.
She had the worst taste in men. She went after Billy Joe, who kind of, who manhandled her. She went up to Ken Schreiner's Jeb, who loved somebody else. And then she fell in love with the guy who kidnapped her twice, Joe Foster. So.
Did it, when Iris, or when Beverlee as Iris, the original Iris, when she left Another World and went to Texas, did she want to go? Was that something she was excited and gung-ho about? I've heard mixed. And did it affect Another World now that Iris, with the whole Mac, Rachel, Iris, the whole thing, that dynamic, which was fantastic, did it affect Another World at that point as well? Because Iris was now not in Bay City.
Well, the interesting thing is Beverlee McKinsey told a story on a talk show in Canada after she left Texas, and her son confirmed it. Nobody, when they were creating this spinoff, nobody went to her and asked her if she wanted to spin off into Texas. So they created the show around Iris, and when they went to her, she was like, "Okay, this is what I want. I want all this money. I want billing. I want this. I want that." And she got most of it because Paul Rausch was stuck because they created a whole show around her, and nobody bothered to see if she wanted to do it. So she did go, and from what I heard, she was a pro. on Another World. She was a pro on Texas. Nobody had any problems with her. I mean, she put her whole heart into Texas. Did it hurt Another World? Yes, I think it did. They brought in Christine Jones as Janice Frame, who became broke up Mac and Rachel. And then they brought in Mitch Blake, who kind of wound up with Rachel. So they were spinning their wheels on Another World to come up with like a third. But they never kind of replaced Iris, because she was, Beverlee McKinsey is unreplaceable.
She's one of a kind, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know how, horrific it was for cast and viewers with Another World when Douglas Watson suddenly died, and then they had to write his passing of Mac Corey, who was one of the originals, into the show. They lost the actor suddenly while he was on vacation, and then Mac Corey. What do we do? Do we replace Mac? And they decided to have Mac actually pass, and those were some beautiful episodes, very touching, because you knew it was real, and the way that they handled it, and the raw emotion of the cast members was extraordinary. Same thing when Constance Ford passed. Ada, another beloved figure who was always there to comfort with her dry wit and her rambunctious nature, just comfort people when it got a little crazy. And two forces that within a few years of each other passed sort of changed the dynamic of Another World. Even though we're talking Texas, with Another World, were you happy when they had Rachel go with Carl, the villain who wanted to wipe out Mac and get rid of Rachel and kidnapped and all that stuff that happened? And then at the end, they had the two of them together and they had children. And the very last scene of Another World is in the living room, and she's going through all the pictures and the Bette Midler song is playing. And I think it was very classy that they ended that series in the living room with all the pictures of all the people through the years. And she goes to Ada, she goes to Mac's photo, and she looks at the rest. And then they go upstairs, they turn the lights off, and there's that famous Mac and Rachel Corey living room as the last shot. And then the final shot is Douglas Watson, Mackenzie Corey toasting.
Aww.
And then it fades to black.
I didn't know that.
Oh, that's what they did. Yeah, it was a beautiful shot, and it was Rachel and Carl, and there's clips of it on the internet too, on YouTube. And they played a Bette Midler song that was really, really beautiful. And the living room was filled with all the pictures of cast through the years, and she's with Carl, and they say, "All's well that ends well." They kiss. She goes walking amongst the photos. She sees Ada. She taps it, kisses it with all the other photos. Then she walks over to Mac's photo, and then she goes across to the piano to the others, and they hug. There's no words. The music, the Bette Midler song is up full. They reach for the light. The light goes off. The light is dim. You just see a little light, studio light, it's just a reflection on Ada's photo and some of the others. And you see them go off up the stairs around the corner, and then they turn that light off, and it's the set inside the living room of Mac and Rachel's house with the lights off. And then they dim down, and you think that's the end. And they show Douglas Watson, Mackenzie Corey in a tuxedo at one of the scenes of one of their Thanksgiving dinners. He used to do those amazing toasts at Christmas time and Thanksgiving on Another World, where he would talk to camera, break the wall and talk to the viewers. From all of us at Another World, we send you love and blessing. And they had a freeze frame of him toasting with a smile in his tux. And that was the last shot for Another World in 1999. That was beautifully done. The Carl and Rachel thing, with him being such a staunch villain, how did you feel about that? Or
be
tough
honest,
to replace Mac. Mac was a good guy.
My association with Another World was only when the 2 years I was at working. Well, the 2 years my desk was outside. Once I watched Another World from 1980 to 82 into 83, and I really never watched it afterwards.
So the Mitch Blake
However,
years and
it was after
Alma and Cecile.
right, Cecile. But what happened was when I was writing this book, I was learning all the backstory. Paul Rausch was the executive producer of Texas, was the executive producer of Another World, and the whole backstory where he, with his input, Another World was the first soap opera to expand to 60 minutes. And then that was doing great. It hit #1 in the ratings, and he got NBC and Procter & Gamble to back his and Harding LeMay's new soap opera, Lovers and Friends, and that bombed after 4 months. And then he got them to agree to let him retool it, and it came back as For Richer, For Poorer, and that lasted less than a year, and then that got pulled. And just before it got pulled, he convinced NBC and Procter & Gamble to expand Another World to 90 minutes. And when that expanded to 90 minutes, the fans weren't into it. It was too much work for the cast and crew. The audience wasn't sticking around for 90 minutes of Another World. And that was when it was decided to bring on some characters and spin off Texas. So with all that background, I had so much information about those three, for Lovers and Friends, For Richer, For Poorer, and the whole beginning with Another World, plus what I watched. When I finished the book, it was too long. And I had a lot in my Texas book about the whole beginning. So I had to take that chunk out. So that's my new book that I'm working on called Daytime Drama, the behind the scenes of Lovers and Friends, For Richer, For Poorer, and the 90-minute Another World. So I've been interviewing actors from Lovers and Friends, For Richer, For Poorer. A number of them went to Another World. I've interviewed Richard Beacons, who played Jamie Frame, Janice Lynn, who played Tracy DeWitt. I'm interviewing Wesley Ann Fenning, was one of the Alice Matthews. I'm interviewing people from that part. The other reason I got into Another World was from Caryn and a lot of the younger people. They hung out together. They would ride the limos from Manhattan to the studio in Brooklyn, hang out in Brooklyn in the studio because there was nowhere to go. So they were like all thrown together in this, for hours, take the limo back. And then a lot of them went to Hurley's. Barbara Rucker, who played Ginny Marshall, her husband was Steve Hurley, who owned this big bar, I guess it was the in bar on the East Side called Hurley's. And they would all go hang out there. John McCafferty, Ken Schreiner, Chris Knight, the guys from Another World, Ray Liotta, Catherine Hicklin, the mixture, and they all go hang out at Hurley's. So I have in Texas, there's a lot of Another World stories about those actors and actresses that they became friendly with.
How they became friendly, right? Christopher Knight came through there in the 80s as well. Peter Brady from the Brady Bunch, which Caryn knows well with the Brady affiliation. Oh,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say that's an amazing thing too. I had remembered that part being on the Bradys and Very Brady Christmas. How did that come your way to be affiliated with such a beloved grouping of people as the Bradys? I had an opportunity on numerous occasions to chat with the wonderful Florence Henderson, and I still cannot say enough about her and about Carol Burnett as being real and affable and just so funny and friendly and witty and saucy. And Florence told me she wrote back literally to almost every single person that ever wrote to her. I could see that over the years.
Doesn't surprise me at all.
She was just such there was a situation where we were at an event and the professional photographers, there was a big gala event. She was in a white pantsuit and they put us all together and they're like, squeeze closer, everybody in the whole group. And she sits down on my lap and I'm holding her up. And I'm like, my God, I'm 10 years old again. I'm holding up Carol Brady. Wait a minute. This is like, I wish I was having show and tell in sixth grade again. She was delightful.
When you meet your childhood idols or people that you respected, I always am blown away by that. But as far as the Bradys, oh my God, I have so many thoughts going through my head about so many things that Tom said. But as far as the Brady Bunch is concerned, after I did Texas. Then I was lucky enough to play Gidget, the last Gidget incarnation of the Gidget series. And there were 7 actresses. I am the 7th to play. There we are. Wish I had that body at this point in my life, but that's never going to happen again. But from there, the series that I did after the new Gidget was, first A Very Brady Christmas. And, that honestly came about Lloyd Schwartz and Sherwood Schwartz. Lloyd Schwartz is Sherwood Schwartz's, say that 10 times fast, son. Sherwood created the Brady Bunch. And that is also a series that just had so many different ongoing, the Brady brides, the Brady, everything that you watch the Bradys grow up. And at this point, when they finally decided to do A Very Brady Christmas and then the spinoff of the Bradys, they were casting for the spouses. And Lloyd Schwartz knew that I had played Gidget, had his eye on me, and thought I would be a good match on that show. He did tell me after I booked that role, though, that I gave a terrible last audition. So that's a lesson to be learned for all of us actors out there, that it's not necessarily contingent on doing your greatest work. I think he had in his mind that, he wanted me, and I was very grateful that he chose me. And we have a good laugh about that. I don't know why I didn't give the best audition. I'm sure I was nervous, but that experience, again, another, point in for me, that meeting a cast that I had watched in reruns. I was a little too old to have watched them in its original run, but all of a sudden you're on the Brady Bunch set with Carol Brady and Mom and Dad Brady and all of those kids, and having a little kissing scene with Barry Williams, and it's sort of like
Johnny Bravo.
Yes, my gosh. And they were lovely. They were an incredibly well-oiled machine. And Robert Reed and Florence were unbelievably gracious. And, I think those of us that played spouses of original Brady Bunch cast members had to find our way a little bit, because they had a rhythm that they had developed over the years, that they were so comfortable with each other. But we laughed, and it was amazing. And Florence Henderson is exactly as you say. She's everything that you would imagine her to be. And we had some fun. Sadly, we didn't last very long. I think I was on a number of projects that were doomed. Somehow we never kept going, but it was all, I wouldn't trade a thing, to be honest. It was all wonderful. And I have to say, Chris Knight is a dear friend to this day. He lives close to me when I'm in Los Angeles, and
We'd love to have him on the show. People have asked for him. So if you see him at a coffee shop, we would love to have him on.
I will text him.
I remember him even from the Another World days after. And then he had his reality show as well. And they all, which is interesting, they've all embraced their characters from the Brady Bunch days. I know sometimes Maureen McCormick was off doing something, or Eve Plum was off doing something, and then they did that whole the Brady Bunch hour. And we had Lloyd Schwartz on as a guest. We had Marty Krofft of Sid and Marty Krofft, who created that, as a guest. Bruce Valanche was just on, and he talked about being involved with the Brady Variety Hour and how interesting that was. And I think it was a different Jan that they had. Jerry Reichel, I think, was
they call
in
her
instead. And
fake Jan, they call her.
Exactly. Have people said to you, Caryn, that there is a slight resemblance to Sally Field?
Yes.
Like you could be sisters, cousins, or something?
Well, I take that as a beautiful compliment, but yes, I've heard a combination of maybe Valerie Bertinelli and Sally Field, but I think
I see both.
Which, if can only a tiny part of me resemble them, I'm grateful. Sally Field is the Gidget I grew up with, and I think in their casting, because I do remember auditioning for that was a long process for that role at the time. And I knew they were seeing every Gidget is petite by nature. Girl midget is what that name stood for. For those of you that don't know that, she was a surfer girl, and the surfers gave her that nickname at the beach. And, the real life Gidget, her, Kathy Koner is her name, this is a story about a real live person whose father heard her stories when she came home from the beach and wrote the original book of Gidget, which was done originally by Sandra Dee. But I digress. Anyway, point
Fascinating.
being, there's so much history in all of these iconic shows that I was lucky enough, not all of them, but two of them, the Brady
to be
Bunch.
a part of. Yes. Yeah.
But I did meet Sally Field once at the Directors Guild Awards and made an absolute complete fool out of myself. So there you go. Fell over myself. She was gracious.
She was gracious. And hey, remember this?
The new
The
Gidget.
third
Family.
Is this the third parent, or is it Dean Butler, who we had on recently too? And
he's promoting his book as well.
Yes, he has his book. This goes back a little bit.
William Schaller as everybody's dad.
Patty Duke show, everything, right? He was
Nancy. Was he the dad in Nancy Drew? Am I speaking?
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I have to research that. But his history was just amazing.
It's amazing.
And like Florence Henderson too. He's everything. He was everything that you would think he would be. He just warm. I felt his he was dad.
The real deal. Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So again, you've been a part of so many wonderful things. Look at that great shot.
Oh my God, that was so long ago.
Amazing. And look what we dug up here. Gidget wood.
That was for an episode of Gidget where Gidget was fantasizing that she was a star, and
she was a star.
They went to great lengths. I remember sitting on top of those letters, and it was windy and blowing all over the place. And,
your career, and we'll have to have you back on too, because we could, do a whole show just on your extraordinary career. Even working with this too, huh?
That was a series that very few people actually saw.
Yeah, I remember.
It was one of the greatest experiences, truly, of my life. And I know I keep saying that about everything.
No, but I can imagine.
This was a show on Animal Planet that had a very short run. But this was before Animal Planet was doing more reality-based shows regarding animals. They tried to do like an hour-long, almost like a Lassie, not in any way the vibe of Lassie, but a show on film having to do with a lot of animals. And I got to play a veterinarian. And the beautiful part of that show was that in every scene we had animals. My husband was played by the wonderful Sam Jones. And if I was vacuuming in the living room, there was a monkey on my shoulder, and chimpanzees and llamas and every animal you can imagine I got to work with, other than elephants. And we did work with a zebra, no giraffes. But again, I'm a huge animal lover, very invested in animal rescue. And so that was quite an opportunity for me. That was great. So thank you for pulling that up. You're taking me for a great walk down memory lane, and I'm loving it.
The Adventures of Mr. Clown. People know you're from that too.
Oh, geez. It's funny.
Versatility.
As an actor, you are always selling your wares, and when someone says yes, it's just, you get to try a lot of different things. And when I look back, I feel very grateful.
Do you have a preference for drama or comedy? Like if somebody said, "Hey, Caryn, we would love to put you in a sitcom on NBC or whatever," does that interest you as well, or do you prefer more the dramatic?
Can you wish that into being? Please send that out.
Yes, everybody. All the producers that are watching.
Everybody.
There she is.
Oddly, I have never done a sitcom. Gidget
Oh.
was considered comedy, Brady Bunch comedy, but I've only worked in comedy in the medium of film. Um, I would have loved to have done, and it's not over yet. But a sitcom and have that experience. I've guest starred on some, but that idea of three cameras and an audience, that brings me back to my roots, starting in theater, and that would be. I hope to be able to do that more going forward. I tend to gravitate towards drama. I think it was Elena Dekker on Texas that started me down that path, because she cried almost every day. So I kind of had no choice. But I feel I've done a lot of drama, and lately I've been doing a lot more sort of Lifetime thrillers and Christmas
Yes, quite a
movies.
few of those. And
And
yeah.
there's a lot of emotion there. But I think there's a tremendous challenge in doing any of it. So if I had a preference, I think I'm almost more comfortable doing drama. That emotion is always sort of up at the surface for me, but comedy is much more fun, as far as
Right.
not pulling from the depths of your soul to.
Are there things you're working on that are coming up you're excited about?
Again, I was just shooting the most adorable Christmas movie, Humbug the Elf, on the tip of Long Island. Literally just finished 2 weeks ago.
Oh, cool.
Gemelli Films. I don't have anything that I know of that's coming up. I'm like all of us, just putting it out there and auditioning, and when people call and say, "How about this?" Most of the time, I'm just super excited to get the chance to do it. But other than Humbug, nope, waiting to hear on a few projects. So I'll keep you posted. How's that?
And you're here with us on the Jim Masters Show, which is such an honor and a delight, Caryn.
Thank you.
Tom, what was the writing process like, gathering all this information and going back into the archives to create this fantastic book that I know everybody's going to love?
Oh, it's like when I did my Ryan's Hope book, same thing. It was sort of like a jigsaw puzzle, because I would have text, like background information or like synopsises about the plots, and fill in with the actors commenting about different things, how they got on the show, what they thought of the executive producers, Paul Rausch or Gail Kobe, who replaced him, things like that. So depending on who I interviewed, I would piece them together. And like with my Ryan's Hope book, some people will get short shrift because if I didn't interview them, if they said no or I never heard from them, I don't highlight them as much, because I'm limited to like 300, 400 pages tops. So to even a 2.5-year soap opera, if you like really did the whole thing, it would be like 1,000 pages. So so I followed with what I did with Ryan's Hope. And with this book, though, it was interesting because I got more writers to talk to me. I interviewed Joyce Corrington, of course, who created and head wrote the show for 6 months. Patrick Mulcahy, who wrote for her and became he's a huge in daytime as a head writer. Gary Tomlin, Richard Culleton and his wife, Carolyn Culleton, Michelle Poteet Lisanti. And the one I kept hearing from people is you have to interview Pam Long. Pamela Long was an actress who played Ashley Linden, but she became the show's last head writer. Became friends with Gail Kobe. She would go into her office and say, "Hey, I bet you, Gail, I know what's going to happen next," and tell her this, this, and this. And she kept doing it so much, Gail said to her, "Why don't you start writing down what you think is going to happen?" And she sort of liked her story ideas. And what happened was, after a year of this, a novelist, his name was Paul Rader. He never saw a soap opera, and it was a time in the late 70s, early 80s when networks thought novelists and playwrights would make great head writers, which turned out not to be so true. So he came in and he wrote the show for a year, and unfortunately, as most novelists, they want to. I was told by Gary Tomlin and Richard Culleton, they want to write their characters. They don't care about some of the other characters that are on the show. And unfortunately, Caryn as Elena Dekker, John McCafferty as Billy Joe Wright, Barbara Rucker as Ginny Marshall sort of fell to the side because I was told bluntly, he didn't know how to write those characters. So they didn't, their storylines, which were really big for the first like year and a half, kind of like faded. Pam Long took over and loved those characters, and she brought them right back to the forefront. Unfortunately, it was too late. She only had wrote the show about 4 months when NBC pulled the plug on it, along with the doctors in December of 1982. Everybody was hoping they would give it a little more time, because Pamela Long really started to turn the show around a little bit from when Paul Rader was writing it. But it was, I interviewed two NBC executives, Lucy Johnson, who's a VP, and Jeff Ryder, who gave me a lot of the background on what was going on via NBC. And it was a business decision. When a show is doing a 4.40 rating and General Hospital is doing 10.0 and Guiding Light is doing 8.0, and the show goes from 4.0 to 4.2, like Lucy Johnson said, the creator's like, we're the ratings are improving, but 0.2 of a point means nothing for the advertisers. And they pulled the plug, which was too bad, because I think if they had gone a little longer, she may have turned it around, because General Hospital quickly fell out of favor once Ginny Francis left, and they brought in She's Hot Now, Demi Moore, as sort of like a fake Laura, and the audience hated that. And General Hospital's ratings started to go down. Guiding Light's ratings started to go down. And if Texas was still at the 3 p.m. time slot, it could have maybe made some inroads. By that time, also, I'll just say, the show got pulled from 3 p.m. in April of '82 and was put on at 11 a.m. opposite The Price is Right, which was the #1 show in daytime completely. I mean, so they went from the frying pan into the fire.
Hard to go up against Bob Barker back then, right?
Yeah. Yes.
You also did some work with The Young and the Restless as well, Caryn? I
did. I know. I was looking at the cast just before we did this show, Jim, because I just wanted to refresh my memory. My brain is not as powerful as it used to be. And I was looking at the number of characters that said, #2, like, Chandler #2 or whatever. And on Young and the Restless, this makes me laugh about soap operas. Tracy Bregman, the beautiful, wonderful Tracy Bregman, who still plays Laura Fenmore on Young and the Restless, was giving birth and was on maternity leave. And they replaced her with me for a very short time to play her character. And it always just made me laugh, because soap opera audiences are just amazing. They embrace so many things, storyline oddities at times, and people coming back, and twins, and all of this. So that was my stint on Young and the Restless, and it was a terrific time. They're a wonderful, wonderful group of people.
We were also part of a group called Tuxedo Junction, 3-part vocal group, singing 40s music in a disco style in the 70s.
Say no more. Drop the mic right there. Yes. Well, first of all, Jim, your knowledge.
Can we hear some Fly Robin Fly or something?
Chattanooga Choo Choo was our hit song.
Yeah,
your knowledge is masterful, pun intended, Jim.
We do our homework, yeah.
I'm telling you, I'm impressed. Thank you. Again, I'm realizing that I said to you, and to your audience, I'm not much of a singer. And I've had a lot of singing in my career.
Yeah.
And always love that. Again, I always feel just humbled when I think about singers that are unbelievably gifted. So I'm not suggesting that I don't love it, or that I haven't enjoyed a wonderful, sort of consistently through my career, had the opportunities to sing. Tuxedo Junction, just not to use up a lot of time, was a disco group. Disco was dying at that point, but they felt, our record producers thought it was a wonderful idea to set 40 songs to the disco beat. So we did a disco version of Chattanooga Choo Choo, which actually hit the disco charts.
Mm-hmm.
And we were almost like the Andrews Sisters meets disco. We were 3-part harmony. We shows like Dance Fever, and we, did a
Mm-hmm.
number of things. We had a disco show in Vegas
Yeah.
with Wolfman Jack. So yes, that was
And you
awesome.
sang on Texas too.
Elena Dekker, that was a huge part of the character. She was a
Yeah.
country western
Country singer.
and she wanted to leave her small town farm life and her family behind, and she got into a whole bunch of trouble. But when you were talking about the Luke and Laura story, Tom, we really replicated that. We duplicated
Right.
it, and so almost at the same time. So again, it's so fascinating to me. In trying to compete with the #1 soap opera, they and again, who am I don't know, but they thought it was a good idea to have Elena kidnapped, and then I fell in love with my kidnapper, and there you go. Tom Wiggins played my.
Mhm.
I've had the most wonderful. I had the most wonderful co-stars in that show, and even though Kim Schreiner was not particularly happy to be there, we laughed so hard. And I have to do a shout out to John McCafferty, because he was so brilliant on this show. When I look back I remember thinking that when I was working with him. He played the character of Billy Joe. He was he was mesmerizing to work with and to watch. He crafted those scenes in a way in which a lot of us weren't really able to. Certainly I wasn't for a lot of it, until I sort of got some skill set under my belt. But I just thought he was absolutely amazing. There's so many. I don't mean to single him out and exclude other cast members, and certainly, I had a great deal of respect for so many of the different actors on our show. But John McCafferty, they asked a lot of him, and he delivered every single time. That's my thought about that.
It's really
and
amazing.
He made it easier for me.
You mentioned also starring in the Broadway production of Grease, which is extraordinary. And Caryn has graced our screens for a number of years. She made many guest appearances on popular television shows as well. The Eddie Capra Mysteries, Matlock, Jake and the Fat Man, Hitmen, Angel of Fire, The Adventures of Mr. Clown, which we talked about earlier. She also played the part of Victoria in the film The Blackwater Vampire. Many television commercials as a spokesperson for the prescription medicine Alivia. She's a spokesperson for Papa Murphy's Pizza, Walmart. Late 2016, she starred in the short comedy film with Eddie Deason and Larry the Soup Nazi Thomas, from Seinfeld. Do you like the commercial work too? Do you like spokesperson work and that as well?
I love spokesperson work. I find it, and I'm sure you relate to that because you do it so beautifully. But when you get to, talk straight to camera or look and try to it's a challenge to try to make that camera somebody, like, come to life. And I find it weirdly comfortable. I don't know about, I've done a number of other commercials where, I did a Jardiance commercial before they did the singing Jardiance commercials, where I was in a hot air balloon, and those sort of things are, I can't say they're tremendously creative. They're wonderful when you book them, and actors, many of us live to book, a national commercial. That's a good win. But spokesperson, I love it. Yeah. Thank you for asking that. I do.
Have you ever done any of that work, Tom? Have you ever done anything where you're in front of the camera and you've done spots, commercials, delve into the acting world as well? Is that something, have people tried to drag you into that because you have such knowledge about,
I was an extra in 1984 on a TV pilot for High School USA. Michael J. Fox starred in the TV movie.
Oh, wow.
And they decided to do, and I was visiting my friend, and he, with two of his female friends, they were hiring non-union extras.
Yeah.
And
right.
I went out there, and we was they filmed it in a high school. We were supposed to be watching this parade, and they needed people to sit behind the stars. It was Ricky Nelson, his mother, and I was chosen to sit, but they put me all the way at the top. And then they had these two older elderly people right lower, they were right behind the stars, and the director's like, cut, you two out and out. He's like, I want someone younger. You up there, move down. It
Oh,
was me.
Wow.
And I had no idea what to do. And the kid next to me was a seasoned. He tapped me on the shoulder. He goes, you have to pretend we're watching a parade and we're having fun and talking to each other. I'm like, because I sat there the first take, I was like just staring into space.
That's
That's as far as my acting career went.
Showbiz. But Tom, you got to see how tedious it is at times.
Oh,
too,
yes.
right?
And actually, it was really hot. And Harriet Nelson saw that I was starting to get a sunburn because I just came from New York. I was there for like 2 weeks. And she ran to her dressing room. She came back and gave me suntan lotion to put on.
how nice, right?
So that was very nice of her.
That's cool. I got a chance to be on some of the Law and Orders. They film them, of course, shoot them in Chelsea, of course, in Lower Manhattan, and then on a series that probably had, well, I don't know if it ran as long as Texas, maybe even shorter than Texas, but it was a good premise. It was an FX TV show. And I was like part of the administration of a college, and it was called Lights Out. And it was a really good one, a great cast. And it was about a boxer who had gone into retirement years ago, but there was a need that his daughter had that was very important. I don't know if it was, if I recall, it was she had to go to college or there was some other urgent need. And in order to come up with the money, he took himself out of boxing retirement, much older, much more weathered. And it's the story of him doing that and trying to survive that in the ring and everything again. And it was a really cool series. It was Lights Out. It was on FX. Got to do that as well. And really cool. It's interesting when you see the process, you know, coming from a TV broadcast, radio broadcast background, but to be on the set like that. And same thing like with doing commercials and infomercials and all of that too. Just, it's really an interesting process. But I get what you say, Caryn. I understand because we were trained. There were two major things they would always say to people when they were starting out on camera. They would always say, and sometimes they would hold up signs for people too. Smile. Because everybody thinks they're smiling and they're not. And the camera really needs more of a smile for it to neutralize to be an average regular smile. So they would always hold up things below the camera sight line for everybody. Smile. It's okay. Smile. And then the other thing too was they would tell people, I noticed this a lot with my work with PBS. They would bring in an actress or an actor or somebody who hasn't done live television. Now you have stage work and everything, but live television, which is a whole other beast from scripted, let's cut, let's do it again. This is live. And some would panic or freeze and they would, how do I ad lib, whatever, off the cuff and just be you. And they would say, look at the camera. Don't think of all the other people that are out there. Don't think of the thousands or millions that are watching. Just think of one person, maybe your grandmother, who you love and who loves you, and just talk to that one person. Everybody else watching will get it, but they will also feel that you're talking to them. Don't make it bigger than it is. Actually bring it in, and it will have a grandiosity on its own. But they would say, smile, and they would say, look at the camera. Sometimes you'd even say, make love to the camera. I don't know if you heard that phrase. Make love to the camera. And then it shall be nice to you. But some interesting things that you have to do. When you were on set, I know sometimes they said with the soaps, there were some actors and actresses who used a lot of cue cards. Were there cue cards there if you needed them? Because I know so much based on memorization, which is incredible with the scripts.
Yeah, I have no memory whatsoever of cue cards. I know certainly I didn't, and you know, my co-stars that I was working with. No, I don't ever remember that. I have, you know, along the way worked with an actor or two that used cue cards. And that's hard a little bit, not a little bit, I'm being kind, because you're not able to work off of them. And so much of it is that relationship. Like Jim, as you're talking about, there's a dynamic of looking straight into camera for certain work, but when you're on set and engaged with your other actor, you rely on them so much. So to have someone looking at cue cards is a skill set that it's something that I have to then adjust to, which I wasn't really very good at. It threw me that I wasn't acting with another human being. But as far as your question in terms of Texas, I don't know. Tom, did anyone ever talk about cue cards? I don't.
No, well, there was a teleprompter, but most people said what you said. A lot of people, the ones I interviewed, didn't want to use the teleprompter because it took them out of character. They said the minute you turned your head to look, and they rather just memorize the lines. The one person who had the most trouble was an actor named Bert Kramer, who was hired. Who was hired to play Beverlee McKinsey's big love interest and was supposed to be the centerpiece of Texas. And from all the interviews, he gave a great screen test. He was a Hollywood actor, film, television, but he never did a soap opera. And once they started the rigors of doing a soap opera, memorizing all that dialogue, he couldn't do it. And he was, back when Texas started, they started to film the show by set. Prior to that, it was done like live to tape. They would shoot the show in order and just follow the actors from set to set. But when Texas started in 1980, they stopped doing that, most of the soap operas. And they filmed, like if you had 3 scenes on one set, all 3 scenes on that set would be filmed and they wouldn't go to the next set. But Bert just couldn't. And his screen partner was Beverlee McKinsey, who she knew that script, her lines inside and out. So the writers told me down to the comma. She would make a pause after the comma. That's how professional she was. And she was getting quite frustrated working with him. And they put him in a coma at one point to give her a break because we didn't have to film with him.
Oh my gosh. See, I'm learning things about the show that I was on and I had no knowledge.
When you get tired of the co-star, put him in a coma. Right. Have his 4-door sedan go off a cliff.
Oh, geez.
They also put him into a second coma. And our son told me a story. She came home, Beverlee, and told her son, could you believe it? I have this big monologue. Bert's laying there in a coma, and he ruined the take. He fell asleep and started snoring, and we had to cut and do the whole thing all over. So he wasn't really adapting, and that also hurt the show because that was the centerpiece. Of, Iris finds her true love from 25 years ago. She becomes nicer, and the chemistry wasn't there, and he was floundering, and they eventually killed him off.
Oh dear, a fate met by many an actor on soap operas.
And then when Texas wrapped, was there ever a thought of her returning to another world and going back to the Iris character with Mac and Rachel and Ada and everybody?
According to her son Scott, she was planning on leaving Another World before the whole Texas thing started. Because she played the role for like 7 or 8 years, and she needed a break. Her then husband, his stepfather, who was on Texas, he was a TV host. He, I think, had cancer, and she wanted time off to spend with him. He passed away. Texas was canceled, and Gail Kobe, the executive producer, and Pamela Long, who was the head writer, had moved to Guiding Light, and they created a character for Beverlee, Alexandra Spaulding, and it was only for Beverlee, and it sounded like if Beverlee didn't play it, that character was not going to exist. So she needed, according to her Scott, it came at a perfect time. Her husband had just died. She needed something, and she had a good relationship with Gail Kobe and Pamela Long. So she did it, and she was fabulous on Guiding Light. She played that part, I think, from 1983 until like 91 or 92, and then she left and retired. But as we're going back to Another World, I don't think so. They brought Iris back like in 87 or 88, but totally they recast the part.
Yes, right. Yes, and that actress just passed a couple of years ago. She was from Australia.
Oh,
she was she was on quite a few years, as well as as Iris. Yeah, sometimes you have these iconic figures that people just love and they feel. I mean, have you had that? Have you had situations where you're in a supermarket or what have you, and they say, hey, Gidget or whatever it may be, they remember you from the Brady family or anything else? Has that happened to you, Caryn?
It has actually. I'm always surprised and always a little bit horrified because it's, you're never looking the way you want to, and then you're coming from the gym with a baseball
That's the
cap.
baseball cap on day.
But I'm always, I feel like it's such a wonderful, I'm always taken aback, because a lot of times we work in a bit of a bubble. And, certainly back in the day when we were filming the show and any of the shows, at the time when they're airing, that happens, a decent enough amounts of time throughout your life. But, these days when somebody says, "Oh my God, it's Gidget," it's always like, "Oh my gosh, thank you." But I wanted to, speaking of this is a funny dynamic because you mentioned that Texas was very popular in Canada, Another World in Texas. And I have a very distinct memory of being in New York. We filmed in Brooklyn, and a number of us flew up to Toronto to do some publicity. And, we had a few fans here and there. We had a nice group of fans, but certainly not a huge fan base at the time. But we got off the plane in Toronto, and literally we were like celebrities there. They
Kind of
I
like
don't
the Beatles.
yeah,
Yeah.
somebody followed me into the bathroom, for an autograph. And it was just the funniest dynamic
Mhm.
to go into Canada, and it was sort of like that Sally Field scene. And what was that movie where she goes to the mall to be recognized? Soap
Right.
Dish, I think
Yeah.
it was. She was a
Yeah.
soap.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And that's what I felt like. Like, oh, I want to go live in Canada now because they know who I am. But it's always lovely when somebody remembers. That's my feeling, and I'm always.
Have you ever dabbled in the producing, writing, directing aspect of the industry as well, Caryn, at all?
Um, oh, producing would be rough for me. I think only in that my business sensibilities are not up to par for that. I've wanted to direct in moments. It's more, I find that I'm able to utilize that little, spark of desire because I have an acting school and I work with young people. And a lot of teaching, if they're working on scenes, I'm noticing more and more lately that it is directing. But as far as the technical aspects of directing, I'm in awe of directors, and it's not something I would feel overwhelmed, I'm afraid, by that. But I have tremendous respect. There's so many things going on at one time and so many moving parts. And to be the captain of that ship, in many instances, that is a job I do not feel well equipped to do.
So leave
Yeah.
it to them and do what you do so well and continue to do so beautifully, Caryn. Absolutely. The book again, Tom. Um, you're such a brilliant writer, and people love your work, and they can't get enough of it. And are you in a situation where you're writing this book and now this is out and you've got this one going and you've got pages of this one going, or are you able to focus on just the one, get it out, then start the next? Or are you somebody that has this drawer has this desk has pages of that, several things going on at once?
Yes.
Somehow I knew that was a yes.
I mentioned about the book about for lovers and friends, for rich and for poor, in another world. I have an agent, and he said you have to do something more commercial. And he goes, "What about the night? Do something on the primetime soap operas." And he's throwing out Dallas and Dynasty and Knots Landing, and I counter with, "Well, I would do a book on paper dolls, Behringers." The soap is the primetime soap, the Colbys.
Mary Hartman.
It didn't last very long. And so he was still sort of like, oh, that could still work. So at one point I was doing both at the same time. I've interviewed Diana Gould, who created paper dolls. Diana Gould created Behringers. I interviewed the creator of paper dolls. But then I've started to get more and more on the other book. And I'm going to say this quickly, Caryn, I've written to Christopher Knight through his publicist and through his website, and I haven't gotten an answer. So if you could put a plug in for me as well.
What should great? I'm going to ask him about Jim. Absolutely. And what am I asking him for you to be interviewed?
About his time on Another World playing Lee Hobson.
Oh, I will talk to him about both.
Yes.
We should just call him right now, don't you?
And our next guest, Christopher Knight, Peter Brady.
Hold up the little FaceTime, and we can, yeah.
So thank you. So I've gotten really into the Another World one, and I've been in Another World. I've been watching the shows.
Have you been watching the past episodes that are
1980, 81. So I kind of pushed the primetime one a little bit to the side because I've gotten really
still.
Yes.
It's amazing how many people video recorded those off television and now they're uploading.
Lifesaver.
I thought I was the only one who recorded things off television and the radio, and now you see all this stuff online. Like he did too, she did too. Wow, it's
and
really
actually
amazing.
There's a big market now because like Melissa
Soap Network was great, but they faded. They were a great way to bring things back. But
Ryan's Hope, they brought Ryan's Hope back.
Yeah, and they had Another World on there and others, and
that's what I think people's taped. I think a lot of like for Ryan's Hope and Another World, I think were taped off of SoapNet.
Why do you think SoapNet didn't work, or it worked but then fizzled out? Was it just mergers and acquisitions, or what do you think happened?
Well, I interviewed Gary Tomlin, who was the head writer or producer or executive producer of One Life to Live around the time SoapNet was, and he felt that by running the show All My Children, One Life to Live, General Hospital at prime time on SoapNet took away the must-watch TV during the day. And that's why the ratings started to go down, because people were like, besides being able to record it, they were like, well, I could watch it at 9:00 tonight on SoapNet. And he told me that he argued with ABC and he said, if you rather you do that, why don't you show in 1980s episodes of All My Children and One Life to Live in General Hospital to get people involved, and then they'll switch to daytime to keep following them.
Exactly.
And they didn't do that. And I think he was right. I think that was probably one of the reasons why
it would have been great. And to bring back some of the others that are gone. I mean, Love of Life and Love is a Many Splendid Thing, The Doctors, Somerset, others where you have the entire thing, and it would be, even though it's maybe a little dated in just in terms of the look or feel, but still it would be part of television history, and it would be fresh for new generations.
Well, you couldn't do that because
rights, copyright, and
60s and 70s, they wiped the tapes. They didn't think soap operas had any future income potential.
They did that with a lot of stuff. Even the first years of Johnny Carson, they did that. And Johnny Carson himself was the one that said, are we preserving these episodes? This is television history. And he was the one that got NBC and his company, Carson Enterprises, to save years and years and years of The Tonight Show, which were buried many, I think, a mile or two below ground in a vault, and all on tape, all of the years of The Tonight Show, except the first few that they didn't even think about, because it was live, a lot of live stuff too, because in the beginning, very beginning, soaps were live also, and they didn't,
well, when I did the Ryan's Hope book, Paul Mayer and Claire Labine were the creators and the executive producers, and Paul Mayer's daughters told me that they decided they were going to keep the tapes and store them out, and I think it was out in New Jersey, and this is 1975, and ABC was like, you're crazy, why are you wasting all that money? And they're like, no, we want to preserve them. And who came knocking at the door when SoapNet started? ABC, to get permission from the daughters because they say all the tapes was saved. Joyce Corrington, when she was writing for Search for Tomorrow, her and her husband, from 78 to like 80 before they did Texas. Joyce told me same thing. They said to Procter & Gamble and Fred Silverman, why don't you save these? CNN started, cable was starting, and they're like, no, there's no value in saving them. So like all of Search for Tomorrow up until like 1980 is all wiped. Texas got lucky because around 1980, the networks seemed to start getting a little smarter, and they started to save the show. The Doctors was saved because it was produced, wasn't Procter and Gamble. It was another company that did The Doctors, and they saved the tapes. I think it was Colgate, one of those companies.
Probably,
And I
yeah.
think it's Good TV or something actually runs The Doctors, and they show from 1968 to 1980, and then NBC bought the show in 1980, and what's missing is 1981 and 1982, and NBC owned them, and they think they were wiped because they can't.
I forget the name of the woman that played. She was a beloved soap opera actress and went on to the CBS soap operas. But on The Doctor, she played the role of Althea.
Oh, Elizabeth Hubbard.
Yes, Elizabeth Hubbard. That's right. She was Althea.
And
I just remember one episode. My mother had it on, and I remember one episode where I think on The Doctors she goes through a plate glass window or through a sliding glass door window. Something happened. I just vividly remember that when it was on, in our house. Derek is watching in Ontario and said, in addition to Christopher Knight, does Caryn keep in touch with other actors from the Brooklyn studio days?
Oh my goodness. Let me think this through. Do I keep in touch? I hate to say it, but I don't actually. Obviously, if I have to think about it, I guess the answer is no. Ray Liotta, before he passed, I had some, we stayed in contact a little bit, but no, sadly, I've seen Ken Schreiner, but no, it was a long time ago, and we've all just
Gone on to
dispersed.
different things.
Yeah, I mean,
Exactly.
I would love nothing more than to have a reunion or to instigate a gathering of some sort. And John McCafferty reached out to me when Tom was interviewing him for this book, and said, "Oh my gosh, I'm watching reruns of Texas, and I forgot all about it. And what a great experience. And Tom, God bless Tom, he's reliving the whole thing, and he was so enthusiastic." But anyway, that very long answer to a very short question.
No, it's terrific. Really fantastic. Keith has mentioned, which is true, Carmen Duncan played the Iris when they returned Iris to another world, and she was a brilliant Australian actress. And then eventually, after many years here, went back to Australia, to her family in Australia. He also wanted to know if you have had any contact with Victoria Wyndham. I know she pretty much lays low. She's done her thing, brilliant actress. You ever have any contact with Victoria, who played, of course, Rachel Corrie on Another World all the way till the end?
That's a Tom question.
I have not. I'm trying to build up a good resume of actors from Another World before I reach out to Victoria Wyndham. I did that with Carla Borelli and got shot down. I thought for sure with all the people I interviewed directors and writers, and she's very.
Some people, once they've done it,
yes, she was very sweet about it. She wished
they've moved on to other things, or they, because a lot of times that when people play a role for a long time, it was a job, it was a thing, and then they've gone on to other things, and now they don't necessarily want to relive or.
So Victoria Wyndham, I'm saving up, but I don't have high hopes because I heard she really doesn't give interviews.
Very nice,
but the one thing when you ask Caryn about in this for the last two books, I've become like matchmakers, not matchmakers, but I'm reuniting people. Yeah. Like I reunited some people in Ryan's Hope.
You did, yeah.
Just this week, Julie Phillips, who played Sally Frame, was good friends with Richard Beekins, who played Jamie Frame, and I connected them again. So yes, and John McCafferty asked for Caryn's information and put them together. And
did you have a favorite? They had several Jamie Frames after he left. Did you have a favorite actor who played Jamie? Was it him?
Oh, it was Richard Beekins. Yes, for me, Jamie Frame was Richard, and
right.
And it's he in our interview he told me that. He was prodded by the veterans on Another World to not resign, to go out and which he's had a great career, it still works. But I asked him, there were 3 Jamies after him. I said, did they ever reach out to you to come back? And he's like, no, they never did. I was like, oh, that's and you never know the reasons why they when it comes to casting on soaps, sometimes they do reach out back to get people to come back. Sometimes
to bring the original one back. Exactly. Yeah.
But my biggest thing was back in the day, like when you would watch Ryan Soap, the dreaded words would be, the role of Delia Coleridge will now be played by, and you would sit there like, no. This are the days where the internet and even Soap Opera Digest and afternoon TV, they were like a couple of weeks behind. So you didn't, sometimes if you, like me, I wasn't really paying attention until you would sit down to watch the show, and then you find out
totally different. Right, exactly. The first person was 6'1" with dark hair and a mustache, and the new one is 4'11" and bald.
For me, on Texas,
but taking on the same role.
Yeah,
I loved Chandler Harbin, who I interviewed, who played the Max Dekker, Elena's older brother. And yes, number 1. And then those dreaded words, the role of Max Dekker will now be played by, I'm like, no, he was great. What happened?
That was my brother.
Yes, right. They didn't necessarily even make that announcement on Bewitched when it was Dick York.
Oh yeah, Primetime
Sergeant.
Yeah,
it was
Primetime never did that.
It was just, there is the new Darren.
Yes.
Yeah, it was interesting. And that was, people still talk about that.
Yeah.
Which Darren do you like better, York or Sergeant? Or I think York was because people saw him first and he had much more of a goofier way about him. I think people pick York more. Yeah. Though I think Sergeant did a great job too. Cool stuff. It's when you go back, I think people love these kinds of conversations because the world is moving so fast. We feel like right now we're living in another world, searching for tomorrow. And it's the everybody is restless right now. So anything
for a good future.
Right. Hopefully it's not a Somerset. There's a few dark shadows.
Oh my gosh.
But
keep going.
But always remember, love is a many splendored thing. Going back and talking about these things because people feel so attached to the people that they've grown up with, the people that they've seen in their lives for so many years, whether it's television, film, stage, people they've listened to for years on the radio, maybe even their local news anchor or weather person. They just get very attached. And we're all very cognizant of that doing the kind of work that we do, that there are people who watch, follow, and support and care, and they may never say anything. They may never approach. They may never come forward, but you sort of know they're there. And it's a kind of a beautiful thing. And I think talking about things like bringing back a show that had its time, had its moment in the 1980s on NBC with people like Caryn and Beverlee and so many others, and spinning off Another World and talking about it and bringing it back to life, it just makes people feel good. And it seemed like a simpler time. And I think we need more of this kind of conversation, don't you guys?
Amen. Yes, yes, yes.
And when it's funny, when I started to tell people I was doing my second soap opera book about Texas, a lot of friends and family like, Texas, what was that? And when I started to release it on social media, fans were coming out of the woodwork about all these who love Texas, and especially the Another World people. Even like Another World, a lot of those fans did follow over to Texas. And like I say in the book, it's definitely an underrated little gem because unfortunately it just went against General Hospital at the wrong time. But I think it went off the air and people forgot about it. For YouTube, thankfully the show is available to watch. And I think people are hunger for the soap operas of the 70s and the 80s, because that was like its real a prime, and where it really became mainstream. And there's an author friend of mine named Melissa Braverman. She's doing the same type of book for Santa Barbara. Like I said, I'm doing my third book. Alina Adams is another author out there. She's doing the soap's greatest moments, and I'm contributing to that with a story about Delia and Patrick Ryan from Ryan's Hope. So I think there are people just, like you said, want to go back to a time when these shows were like, part of their lives, and and watching a soap opera and going home and watching their stories, like my grandma used to call it, is a nice
stories. Yes, I'm going to watch my story now. My story is on, right? Exactly. Yes, exactly. Right. That's cool stuff. It's great memories. And Caryn, you're a delight to talk to. Really appreciate, all of the generosity of time. Love to have you back and dig in deeper and share more of the incredible things you've done. And Tom, of course, you're always a pleasure to have here, and you're always welcome on the show. And there is the book, Texas, An Oral History of Daytime TV's Answer to Dallas. Tom Lisanti, forward by Caryn Richman. That's kind of cool, writing the forward to a book, isn't it, Caryn?
Oh my gosh, I just wanted to do it justice, to be honest.
Oh, it was great.
Thank you. It was very cool that he had asked me, and then I thought, I panicked. It was like, I think,
what do I write? What do I
have? But it was an honor, and I appreciate it. It was a beautiful time. And the book is really incredible. So for it, not just for Texas fans, but for soap opera fans.
Yeah.
And I kept marveling at how much I did not know behind, what was going on behind the scenes. And this opened my eyes to this genre like nobody has, like nobody's business. So bravo to Tom.
Yeah, thank you.
And to Jim, thank you for your graciousness and for, if we're winding down, which is what I'm saying, I just wanted to say thank you for having me.
The pleasure is all mine.
To join you, so thank you.
Thank you for writing the forward.
The pleasure is all mine. Come back and see us again. And all the viewers have been commenting, lots of comments as well, and loving seeing you, Caryn, and Tom back as well, and wishing you much blessing and joy. And they've already called, well, Tom was already designated Jim Master Show Lovity the first time he was on. You are now considered a Jim Master Show Lovity as well. Yay! How cool is that, Caryn, huh?
Thank you. I love it. I appreciate it.
Of all, there's Emmys, Grammys, and Oscars and Peabodys. Be a Lovity on the Jim Master Show.
I'm honored. Thank you.
And that Long Island connection too, right?
Yay for Long Island.
Good pizza, good bagels.
Oh, absolutely.
And the stories in the book about the Texas and Another World people hung out in Amagansett for a summer. There's stories.
Yeah, that's a whole other show. We have to tell. Stay tuned.
Next week, when Caryn and Tom return, we're going to pull the curtain open on the Amagansett story. And then we'll move over to Sag Harbor and the Hamptons. Caryn, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the time with me as much as I have with you. And say hi to Christopher Knight and everybody else. I'm calling
him right after we get off the show. I have work to do.
You be well.
You
Bye.
too.
Thanks for being with us, Caryn. You're the best. Tom, thank you as well. Congratulations on the book. Now, we want to make sure people know as far as where the book can be found and all the rest. Tell us about the specifics. Of course, they can go to bearmeadow.com and Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all those
places. It's not available yet for pre-order. It should be, I would think.
So this is like an exclusive preview.
Yes, this is definitely a preview for it, but it should be out. I think he's put it on the fast track, so I think it'll be out within the next couple of weeks.
When I, got wind of it, and of course you've been a guest on our show already, knowing of the series, knowing of the Another World connection, and having seen all of it, I said, we've got to, bring this on to bring back the memories. Here is somebody that's taking time to actually sort of resurrect those memories and tell the stories and behind the scenes and all the rest, and go through the trouble of digging and researching and archiving and getting photos and quotes and interviews, which is never an easy task. We have to remember and celebrate that show and all the people involved, like Caryn with her illustrious career.
Yeah, she's great. She was really a great interview, and she wrote a nice forward, and she was very insightful in our interview and stuff. And since you're a big Another World fan, I think you'll really like the next book, because a lot of it is all Another World. entirely another world from like 1978 to like 1982.
Yes, that was during the Alma, Cecile.
Cecile.
Yes, and
Do you remember
they
Kit
brought in
Holloway?
Sandy Corey, and
Yes, Sandy Corey came on. There was Kit Holloway was a big part of it for a while, and
that's
then
right.
also the introduction of the Texas people. Carla Borelli as Rena
Yeah.
Cook,
Tony
and
Cummings, I think, was
Tony
on there as
Cummings, right, as
well,
Rick
and
Holloway.
and the actor that played Bailey, who played Russ.
David Bailey as Russ
Bailey,
Matthews.
Liz, of course, Aunt Liz.
Irene Daly, who
Irene
people talk
Daly.
about. I interviewed, like I said, Tracy Lynn, who played Tracy DeWitt, who was married to David Bailey's Russ Matthews. She had interesting stories about how she was the Matthews were the ones that were supposed to spin off to Texas, and how
It
she
was
didn't
the
want to.
Matthews first on Another World. It was really written for the Matthews. Then the Corey angles
Right.
started coming in with Rachel and then the Frames, the Steve Frame, and but it really was Liz and all of the rest.
And a
Hugh
lot of stories
Marlowe.
I've gotten about Ray Liotta, who played Joey Perini, because he was like the big heartthrob for before Sandy Rich came on as Sandy Alexander or Sandy
Sandy
Corey.
Alexander that became Corey, right? Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of stories about working with him and stuff, and a lot of stories about Connie Ford as Ada, who was the master of using the teleprompter. Even though,
yes, I always wondered because you see, like, was it cue cards or teleprompter?
yeah,
And
she's
she'll
looking.
always take the glance.
Yeah.
She'll always glance at it. She'll always know when the camera's on her. You can see it. She always knows when the camera's on. And when she catches it, she looks away quickly.
Right.
Yeah, you'll see it. Yeah.
It's funny because when you're watching it originally and you're sitting back on your couch and the TV's far away, you don't really notice it. But when you watch it on YouTube, like on my laptop, and I watch it, and you're like staring at it, you're like, oh my God, she's reading the whole thing off the teleprompter.
That's it.
But Richard Deacon said she was a marvel at it. She knew how to work it. And he said she was a firecracker. If she screwed up, it was either the crew's fault, there was a light and it was in her eye.
Right. Oh yeah, she kept everybody on their Constance Ford from, of course, Another World.
There'll be stories about her in my book too.
Ada, yes, she was
I love
a
Ada.
firecracker. She was a great character, yes, and I remember when she had passed and how they treated that as well, which was a very beautiful way they treated the passing of the actress and of the character of Ada.
There's no way they could have recast that part. I
remember when she was married to Gil, Dolph Sweet, who ended up on a lot of things, but he was in movies, but I don't know if he left that because in the 80s he ended up with Nell Carter on Gimme a Break.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That was Dolph Sweet, who played Gil, her husband at that one of the times on Another World.
Yeah, then she was married to a character named Charlie Hobson.
Yeah, and they killed him off.
Yes, and they made her.
I wonder why.
It looks like because then I'm watching it.
They always wanted her single, and
because she opens a beauty parlor and with Clarice, and I guess they wanted her more. Yeah, maybe they wanted her single and dealing with his family and stuff. I don't, because she's friends with Clarice, and then that's when they bring in Christopher Knight as Clarice's younger brother Lee Hobson, and up to the part where they're bringing in the older brother Denny Hobson. That they sort of dominated the show for a little bit from 81 to 80. Definitely 1981. That's where I am. I'm in 1981 right now.
1981. Yeah, that was the part where there's the trial for the baby that Rachel had with Mitch.
Yes.
Because they were in St. Croix.
Yes.
Janice Frame tries to kill Mac. Mitch was part of that, and that whole thing. And there was always that underpinning of when Mitch would be on, does Rachel still like Mitch? And then poor Mac, was in love with Rachel. Right. And then they put him with
Alice.
Alice Frame. They put her, and it was an interesting mix. And Ada was trying to keep everything together.
Right. Yeah, she's the balls, juggling the balls in the air, and then Cecile's drugging Jamie, and all this stuff is going on.
You can see that there was a real respect and admiration between Victoria Wyndham, Rachel, Douglas Watson, Mackenzie Corey, and Constance Ford, Ada, you could just see that you could see that when Douglas Watson passed on another world as Mac Corey, leader of everything, that there was a real loss there. You could see it. You don't always see Ada cry a lot on that show, but you could see the feeling, the depth a little bit more when Douglas Watson passed away. Really beautiful episode. And George Mallory wanted to know from Caryn if they were going to stream the new Gidget on a streaming service. I don't know, but that sounds like a good idea, it's amazing with Caryn as well, that she was in all of these incredible shows and series too.
Gidget, she had a great career.
The Bradys, the Very Brady Christmas, and so much more. Really, really cool.
She lasted, the whole only like a handful of the actors that started on Texas lasted the whole 2.5 years, and she was one of like 8 that did. So she was, her character, she was great. Her character,
they loved her character, exactly. A delightful person, a real delightful person, and I'm glad we were able to put this together and celebrate your work, her work, all of us together, and this amazing book, one of several. And he's a prolific, award-winning author, Tom, and here is one of the latest. Texas, there's Beverlee, and he's working on some other surprises, like he said as well. So keep a watch for that. Amazon and Barnes and Noble, where books are sold, Bear Manor Media as well. Tom, a pleasure chatting with you here. It always is.
Thank you so much for having us on.
The time goes by so fast, and thank Caryn again for us as well.
Yes.
And let's stay in touch and keep me posted on everything. And
I will.
We keep that porch light on for you as well, my friend. Okay.
I'll let you know if I make contact with Victoria Wyndham.
Oh my God, that would be fantastic. And keep spreading the word about our show. I know you're a viewer and a fan, and I really appreciate that loyalty, my friend.
You had my friend Carol Hollenbeck on twice.
Oh, she's amazing, isn't she? What a riot. She's amazing.
My Dueling Harlows book. She has stories about working in Hollywood, and she has connections to both the Carol Baker Jean Harlow movie and the Carol Lindley Jean Harlow movie.
Oh my! She is a hoot and a holler. We love her. She's always funny when she's with us too, and she's a straight shooter.
Yes,
she's New York.
And a good writer too. She's got two. She has a novella.
Writer.
Yeah, she has a new novella out. That's really good.
Yeah, that's right. She was all excited about it. And when she's on, she always has that little like mini me, that little doll, which is cool, like a little Carol. That's cool stuff. Thanks for being with us. Hope you enjoyed the time once again, Tom, and come see us again on the Jim Master Show. Okay.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
All right. You be well.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. Congratulations to Tom on the new book. Again, looking back at that daytime drama, short-lived, but in the memories and hearts of many. Texas. It was on NBC in the 1980s. It was a spinoff of Another World. Of course, we talked a lot about all of these shows that you may remember. Another World, long-running soap opera, daytime drama, 35 years on NBC. So he really took a deep dive into Texas. We thank Tom. And we thank Caryn, a wonderful acclaimed TV and film actress and singer, joining us here on the show. Real pleasure to have them here. If you guys enjoyed this episode of the Jim Masters Show and our special guests and all the episodes, hey, do something special. Let us know. What can you do? Well, you don't have to put $5 in an envelope like Super Sales once said on a kids show. And then they got the TV station, Channel 5 in New York, got all these $5 bills from kids. Give us a like. And then when you give us a like, you'll see more of that. That's the show open. So you'll get to see more of that if you give us a like. And here it is. Thumbs up, like, share the episode as well. And leave a comment below, right below. Below the episode, there's a comment section, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That helps us grow as well. And you get a chance to see all these great episodes. And when you subscribe to the YouTube channel, click the notification bell. Really important to do that. Why? Because you get notifications from us about all of our fabulous episodes that you can interact with and more. So like, comment, subscribe, share the episode on your social media, and come see us again. Some of these guests that we've been talking about, you can see all of the guests archived on our YouTube channel, Jim Masters TV. So any of these references that we've been making about great guests, Stephanie Powers, Bonnie Bartlett, all of these incredible guests we've had on, just scroll back in the archives. So all of them are there for the taking and for the liking and the watching and the viewing. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook and X at Jim Masters TV. We love having you here. Hope you enjoyed this episode going down memory lane as we celebrated Texas with our very special guests, Caryn Richman and Tom Lisanti, right here on the Jim Masters Show. This is your host, Jim Masters, thanking you for your time this time till next time. Don't forget to love one another, take care of one another, and don't forget to do the very same for yourself. It's important to do that. We'll see you on the next episode. Love having you here. We'll be right here waiting for you. We'll keep the porch light on for you as well, like we do for all the guests. Be well, and cheers.